kind of emerges from what I know you're hearing as you're working with people and what I continue to hear from people. And we certainly hear it at the executive level, but I'm really interested in what we're hearing from folks in the middle,
Yeah.
supervisors, managers, FDOs, directors. And the thing that we're hearing more than anything else, and it's really interesting because we've just come through 15 months of the pandemic, and some services experienced quite a bit of slowdown during the pandemic. And yet, what we're hearing when we work with people and we sit down and talk to people about their organizational culture and finding and keeping enough of the best people, and then connecting that with creating employee engagement where the frontline employees are the best recruiters and sending out a message, the frontline employees are sending out a message that says, come work here, I love working here. So if that's what an organization needs to do, what we're teaching people and we're finding really works is when the folks in the middle have the time and space to really connect with frontline employees, build and nurture good relationships, and listen deeply and treat those people with a profound amount of respect. But what we're hearing from those people is their plates are way too full and they don't have time.
Yeah, and we just had a chance to spend 4 days with a group in our leadership academy, just an incredible cadre of students, and many
Yes.
of them shared the same thing. And I want to connect this to something we often talk about, which is what people want from work. When we say at its core, they want three things: connection, meaning, and respect. And what many folks said, and many of these folks shared similar, which is they don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know when they're supposed to do it. And they live in fear that they'll do the wrong thing at the wrong time. And so these are great people wanting to do great things for the organization who invested 60 hours into a leadership academy and stuck through it through the whole pandemic, right? They waited over a year to come back and finish their second part, and they say many of the same things. And so I wonder, how does that jeopardize that feeling of connection, meaning, and respect?
Well, you know that if your plate feels too full and you are operating at a high level of stress because you're leaving work on most days with not a feeling of accomplishment, but a feeling of disappointment because of what didn't get done, or you're just ignoring it and can't think about work at all because every time you do, you think about what isn't done. So if that's the work environment, what's lost for our supervisors is the intrinsic rewards of feeling a deep sense of accomplishment, of satisfaction, of meaning, all of that. And we know that if people in the middle don't feel positive about their jobs, they can't fake it. They can try, right? They can
Right.
try to fake it, but it people are going to pick up on it if they're not feeling much joy from work.
Well, and that's exactly what we want our clinical folks to do, is to have those highly tuned bullshit sensors. And so if our people in the middle are faking it, our crews pick up on it. And I think that even makes it worse, which is the feeling of, oh my goodness, it's not working and they're covering it. And the folks that we get a chance to talk to work for great organizations and work for great leaders. I think there's just a spot of attention that's missing. And I don't think that attention is going to be found in a time management book, is going to be found by the number of sticky notes that I use or calendar programs that I use. I think instead it might be better understood if we focus on maybe the system part of it and then our part of it. So maybe there's a couple buckets there that we might talk a little bit about. So organizationally, can we do a little bit of work that might better influence the workload of those folks in the middle? And then how might we as individuals do a better job of these spinning plates that we have in front of us?
Good. I really like those two buckets. I think that's where we need to focus this attention. So if we're talking about how the job is structured for people in the middle, and um, and in fact, much of what we're going to talk about here, I think, applies not just to the people in the middle, but also people to the top, because the dominant feeling of most executives in this business is also that they're too busy. We ask them, do you have time to build the team? Do you have time to slow down and think about where you're going? Do you actually have time to really mentor other people? Especially when mentoring is more listening than telling. And what we see is that they don't have that. So I think we have to start by re-recognizing how wrapped up the whole industry in what we call the EMS paradigm, which is this paradigm that is characterized by reactivity, and remember, paradigms are patterns. They're the patterns that sort of lay over and often dictate the way we do things. So it's characterized by reactivity, it's characterized by symptom management, and it's characterized by scarcity. And we like to look at the other side of that paradigm, and what we're often talking about is what if we were, instead of reactive, proactive? What if we, instead of focusing on symptom management, we're doing some root cause analysis, and rather than just focusing on scarcity, we're focusing on abundance. The whole industry was born and bred this paradigm of reactivity to manage scarcity, and especially scarcity. We've had scarcity of time, we've scarcity. Would you agree, Aarron, that over the last 10 years, course, have really become dominant issue for people that finally have to think deeply about the role in the middle, and that the role in the middle really now is taking new importance because of the workforce issues.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Um, what I would agree is that the role in the middle is indeed the one that is going to make an organization the employer of choice or not. Unfortunately, I just don't see it happening across the industry. What I see happening across the industry, because of so many understandable reasons, reimbursements going down, expenses are going up, contracts are setting more and more unreasonable expectations on the organizations, UHUs, response times, unseen times, etc. What I see is we continue to lump more and more and more onto that person in the middle. Hey, who should do that? Oh, let's pick the person who's around all the time. Oh, we're short staffed. Let's put them on the truck to fill in the gap. Hey, we need to get supplies out to the bases. Let's have them deliver. Oh, let's, get some crews in for EMS week barbecue. Let's have them cover. All logical. And so, John, I'm not convinced, and maybe we can do our part to try to help to convince others that that person in the middle certainly can be a frontline manager, can take the crisis of the day and try to manage the non-emergency workload. The emergency workload are community paramedic work, the dispute between crew A and B, and the needs that dispatch has, and everything in between. But I think we miss what will likely become our competitive edge, which is having those folks indeed be those frontline folks that create that workforce that we find more of the right people to be part of. So I'm with you in the concept. I'm not sure that we have leaders across the nation that necessarily agree.
And and it's even worse than think that we historically have um, not had enough capacity in the middle.
Well, I think you're hitting it on the head, and I might over exaggerate. So when you fill out the eval, this was Aarron who said these things. I don't know that we put the same value, and I'm going to use monetary value because often that's where the real value shows up, what we're willing to spend money on. So I'm going to stir the pot. We can buy a new CAD system at multi-millions of dollars, or we can hire a bunch of frontline supervisors and not have them on the truck. Now, I realize that cost-wise, they're not always the same, but the point I'm trying to say is when we're thinking about how important CAD systems are, ambulances, new defibrillators, new training mannequins, would we put the same weight, magnitude of making that decision as talking about frontline leaders, frontline supervisors, not on the ambulances or not on the desk answering phones in the comm center, not wrenching on the trucks if they're our maintenance leader, not checking out trucks if they're our leader with supplies and VSTs and things like that. I'm not seeing it as much as I would like to see it. We invest in our clinical folks, we invest in our leadership folks, we invest in all of the operational components, but it seems like that's the position that gets left out.
So when it comes to those people feeling like their plates are too full, they are.
I think they can be, but again, when we talk about the personal component, I just wonder if there are two pieces. One is when I hired the person, did I hire them because they're really gifted at being able to manage multiple demands all coming to me at the same time, and I can bring calm to the crisis? And I use that word calm very, very deliberately. Or did I hire the person who's an excellent paramedic, EMT, they were our best dispatcher, they're our best mechanic, and now I bring them to this next level and they have that technical ability, but maybe not that leadership ability? Or did we invest in the leadership ability? So are their plates overwhelmed because they themselves don't have the tools to better manage the plates? And I'm not trying to dismiss the concern we've heard, but do they have the tools to better manage those plates? Do they have the ability to influence their boss and getting a better understanding of the priorities? I want to also spend some time talking about that piece too.
Good. Well, hold that for a minute and let's just talk about the structure piece, because what I think one message I'd like to deliver is we need to take seriously the perception of frontline supervisors that their plates are too full. And that when you and I show up and we do training and education around how to engage employees and how to build and nurture relationships with frontline employees, that these people are excited about that but don't have the capacity. And so the message I want to say is, if you're having morale problems in your organization, if you're having issues where your people aren't recommending employment at your organization to other people, it's likely that you have an engagement issue. And the way you begin to work on an engagement issue is with getting clear about the culture you want and giving capacity to the person who has the closest relationship to the front lines. We often say this, and it's really important. People are called to be one organization. And what we see is that the person that they're closest to, that frontline manager, is usually the one who develops the relationship that they'll have with the organization. But if that person is too busy doing multiple tasks, jobs, and responsibilities, they're not going to be able to do that. So the way we've been talking about it is that we feel that people in the middle structurally need to have X capacity. And what we mean by that is they need to have capacity to be able to have those unproductive conversations with them that are about connecting, they're about storytelling, they're about accountability, but be able to have conversations on a real regular basis and have the time for them. Conversations and connection and relationship building is one of the most time intensive things that we do in the organization. And if the people that are charged with doing that don't have any excess capacity, it won't get done. What will happen is the trucks will get filled, the shifts will get filled, the reports will get filled out, and the extra duties as assigned will get done. And what will get sacrificed is the relationship with the people. So what we're encouraging is we're encouraging, if your supervisors are saying my plate's too full, listen to them, work with that perception, and try to understand, because in most organizations that we work with, they don't have enough frontline supervisors. And the ones that they have are overloaded. So I'm just wondering if you'd agree with that, Aarron, if that's what you would see in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might encourage a few questions. So you might be listening in thinking, boy, guys, I don't think I agree. Our soups are on the trucks. It's the only way we can afford them, all of that. So we believe that if you're not facing a workforce crisis, you're going to shortly. Across the nation, we're seeing it, from the biggest services to the smallest services. Organizations are not being able to find people to even apply for the jobs, let alone the right people to fill the jobs. And we know there's a cost to turnover. So whether or not you believe the number that we use or the number that Dr. Daniel Patterson used, and he came up with in his research, there's a cost there. And so that cost today is in overtime and extra uniforms, but eventually it could be to the clinical care you provide, to the contract you do or don't get, to the community reputation. So a few questions I might ask you to ask yourself to do your own test. And the first is, what does the job description say? Is it to be that best frontline clinician, or is it to spend 3/4 of their time telling stories, connecting, encouraging, mentoring, talking to them about tough calls and translating organizational theories into rank and file conversation? Which gets 75% of the time? Next, I'd encourage you to start to look in the organization. And if you're feeling like morale is down, engagement is down, there's more drama than you would want, see where that's at. Where's that coming from? If you find a place where it doesn't exist, where is that? Our experience is when organizations are thriving, we find that they have the best frontline leaders and people rave about them. And it doesn't mean they just tell people what they want to hear. It means they have this way of giving a hug when they need it, giving it a little bit of a kick in the behind when they need it as well. But they do it with style and grace. The wheeler dealers that says, yeah, remember that day I helped you with that getting off early? Well, I have a shift on Thursday and the debt has come due. And they're like, oh, fine, John, I'll pick. They just, you know what I'm talking about. They know how to wheel and deal. And the last question I would have for you to test whether or not your supervisors, your frontline leaders, the people in the middle, indeed have enough unproductive time to do this important work is, can you get together off-site for a day? Because too often we hear, can't do it. Nope, no, can't possibly do it. No, can't do it. I don't even think once a year is enough. My question to you is, can you get together off-site, everyone, including the frontline leaders, once a quarter? If you can, you have enough on productive time. If you can't, what is it that can't happen without them? And yes, somebody's going to carry a radio and have a manager on call or something like that. But what is it? Just a few little internal little self-tests that you might do.
Well, I think those are really the kind of that I think will help people willing to hold up the mirror, that will really reveal what's going on. And we certainly understand that most organizations don't have any excess money to hire more supervisors. We get that. What we're hoping that people will consider is that they'll consider that if they want highly engaged frontline employees, that somehow they have to build a relationship with them. And they're going to need the capacity to do that. And it may not be this year, but as you're beginning to think about how do I compete for the workforce of the future, you should be thinking about how the work-life situation of your frontline supervisors, because they're going to make or break your organization. And likely, as this industry grows and matures, it will need to expand the quantity of people in the middle to really meet the needs of the people out there, especially if you're dynamically deployed. If your people are coming in, picking up a truck, and they're being on the road, somehow you're going to need someone in the middle to build a relationship with them.
And John, I think you would agree with this. I think there are some meaningful, measurable, practical things that we can do now. Yes, in the ideal world, we'd have many more frontline leaders with fewer direct reports, with a lot more free time, shall we say, unproductive time, shall we say, to do that. But that's likely not going to happen post-COVID, when many of us, many organizations were lucky to have survived with the downturn, with the increase in expenses, all of those. So you and I are huge believers in what we call the rule of 10%. Can we just get 10% better? I always tell the story, I want to learn Spanish, and I never can seem to find time to go and buy Rosetta Stone and do that thing. But if I just need to learn one more word a month, that makes me 10% better than the 10 words that I know today. So I have some thoughts on 10%. And one of the thoughts I would have is for a leader to work with those frontline folks who might say, I feel a little full, to just see if we couldn't go through together, what is a typical day like? And are there some things in that typical day that maybe we don't need our frontline leaders doing? Maybe it was always historically that way, and it's just the way life has been. But gosh, imagine a sit down with those frontline leaders that just say, hey, here's what's really important. I know your day is busy. Can we just, what's a day look like? And maybe as the leader, I could take a few things off that plate.
Yeah, I love the 10%. It's about, if we can acknowledge, I think many supervisors have a passion for the work that they do. And if they feel that you've helped them get what the priorities are, for them to micromanage the shift, then just care about that. And if your priorities are for them to connect with people and build relationships with frontline staff, then help them try to find a capacity to do that. It often, see lots of times things that frontline supervisors are doing that they don't need to do. That actually someone else within the organization could do those things. And all of those what they call administrative duties, paperwork, everything else. The organizations that we see working really well are freeing supervisors up with the prime directive that they connect and build relationships with people. And I really like that. But that brings us to the second bucket, which second bucket is and that this applies to everybody from executive to frontline worker, which is what is our personal responsibility for how we structure and use our day. And we like to talk about this in being that the issue is not really time, but the issue is us. And because the numbers are the numbers, we all get 1,440 minutes each day, and we often think about those 1,440 minutes as pennies or dollars, and you get choices around how you spend those 1,440 minutes. And the real issue is not so much about managing time itself, but really knowing ourselves and managing ourselves so that when we spend our 1,440 pennies, we've decided where to spend them in a way that best benefits what we want. So that's sort of the thing that's there. The challenge for us gets back again to the intrinsic rewards, which are the vast majority of emergency medical services are not in here for the extrinsic rewards. They do want to be paid. They do want their benefits. They do want their personal time off. But why they've chosen this profession is because they believe that in being able to help people out or work for an organization that helps people in emergency crisis situations and mobile health care, that it will bring some good things to them, a deeper sense of satisfaction, a deeper sense of what's important, a deeper sense of meaning. And what we want to do is have people pause as you think about how you're spending your 1,440 minutes and say, how does that connect how I spend my time each day with what I really want from the work?
Yeah. With the organization really getting clear about the role, the importance of being the frontline engagers, next comes the responsibility of that person to ask, is this the job that I want? And why I say that is, let's imagine that I thrive in chaos. I can be, we say, oh, no, oh, come on. I can be exciting, right? The crisis, bringing order to it, making command decisions, directing. That can be quite fulfilling. I immediately see the results of my actions. And so if that's me, and indeed this position is about being the frontline engager, slowing down, always bringing calm, really not going to a call and taking command of the call, but maybe instead at the difficult call, meeting them at the hospital, making their cot as they get a few minutes to just kind of let the air out of that emotional bubble from the last call, or chatting with them a little bit. I might find that's not the job for me. Or I might find that chaos follows me. So maybe I just need to own that. I'm ready for this next piece, but I need to do some of my own work. I need to do some of my own work about how I influence my boss, and getting up a little bit of a courage to say, here's my plate. Could you help me with it a little bit? Getting some feedback, some critique about that. Even just being able to better, organize my day. And especially if you're a frontline leader and you're listening to this, that you could plan your day and you could have it all set out until the truck that's 2 states over blows a tire and the crew and the patient are stranded, and next thing you go. But is there a way to have big chunks? And they say, every time I get a moment, I'm going to work on my big chunk. So do I lead my day or does my day lead me?
Well, I want to back you up because you just talked about something a minute ago that I think we need to expand on.
Great.
So you talked about somebody enjoying, finding some sort of enjoyment or some sort of motivation to actually be in sort of a busy, chaotic state. And so I want to also apply this to executives,
Hmm.
people anywhere in the organization. So why would somebody, so here's an interesting question. Why would somebody want to be in sort of a stressful, chaotic, I'm so busy, oh, what do I need to do now? I've got this, I've got that. What is that benefit of that? What because you don't keep doing stuff that you don't get something out of. So they're getting something out of it. What is it? What do you think?
First, I would think you would feel important.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm so busy. Look, I got 6 things and I got 5 meetings and piled up, and people are waiting at my door, and my phone is ringing, and my pager is going off, and emails are coming in. I'm important. I'm needed. I'm valuable. I might have power because all of that must come to here, right? Rather than saying, you know, that's an operations question. That's for clinical. That's for this. If you need something from me, I'd be happy to. But yeah, so makes me feel important, makes me feel powerful. Immediate, I can see the immediate results of my actions. Maybe I'm a little scared of that other role, right? What if the role is calm, where I look at my calendar and I say, gosh, John, I don't, I don't have any appointments today. I, I don't know what to do today.
Yeah, so I think that part gets to what you always like to talk about, which is really fear. I think there's fear when we've been born and bred in the EMS paradigm of reactivity, symptom management, and scarcity, and we've created a life that's busy, and and of course that's the number one answer we get at most conferences when we greet leaders and say, "How are you doing?" And they say, "Ah,
Busy,
busy."
busy.
And I think busy is a wonderful way of covering for a fear around having to do real leadership, because real leadership, especially at an executive level, asks the question of where are we going? And it really asks this question of how do I not just manage my business and get trucks out the door, but how do I take my business to the next level? How do I really take my business to some place it's never been before? How do I help be part of the change agent that solves the fundamental and critical issues facing the industry today? And so I think that in being busy, it keeps us from having to say, to really look at some of the more difficult questions inside. And so, and there, what my encouragement is if your days are really, really full and you don't have any of that excess capacity, a question is to ask why. And the easy answer, of course, is because there's so much to do, right? But we know when we really study people that they do what's really important to them. That's what gets the most attention. And what I think is important is the chaos and busy.
Yeah, just a special kind of note to the executives who might be listening in, the owner operators who might be listening in. We recognize and have huge respect for individuals who have built things from scratch. And that might be an owner operator that in the 70s bought a funeral home based ambulance, and today it serves multiple states, has hundreds of employees, and provides excellent services all across the board. From an executive of a governmental or non-for-profit who took a small organization and again built it into something that exists. And so we sense that fear that says, if I let it go, it's going to fall apart. My legacy, my history, this responsibility I have for all of the employees. But the reality is you're holding it back. If you're the single source of everything, then you're the single source of everything. And so when you can let it go, doesn't mean that there shouldn't be accountability, doesn't mean that there shouldn't be good performance measures, things that you look at that says, hey, if all of my little stoplight indicators are green, I ain't even going to come into work today. But here's the thing I want to ask you, whether it's your people in the middle, other executives, if you don't trust them to the point where you can't empower them, then fire them. Because you're saying that you're wasting the position, you're wasting the money. And so I think it's really important to come back to that piece that says sometimes there's fear in us in why we like to live in chaos, because maybe we don't know what it looks like to not, or we're fearful that if my plate isn't full, my boss will question why they have my position, or I'll get downsized, or I'll get right sized. And so I control information, I control knowledge, and all we're doing is stifling the organization. Gallup and Rath have a wonderful concept called the Strengths Finder. And I think it's great, but it's a little too complex, right? We just simply say, where do I work really, really well? Where do my skills and talents come out? Those that know John and I know that we have different skills and talents. We have some that are complementary. One of mine is I'm not an artist. I could never be an artist. I would never want to be an artist. Put me in a job that requires that, I won't do well. So I just need to know that. So if I'm somebody who needs chaos, then I should understand that about myself and find a role. And we want to suggest to you that's not this role.
So I know that you're a really good time manager. You get things done efficiently. I don't know anybody as busy as you are in terms of the amount of things that you accomplish, and yet you never seem frantic to me. You never seem to live in chaos. What are some of the secrets and tools that help you be able to juggle multiple balls and get a lot of things done and yet still have time to watch Biggest Catch?
Well, first, I hope that I demonstrate a good work-life balance. And I know that's a loaded word and phrase these days, but I'm fairly clear about if I'm not taking good care of myself, then I'm going to be frantic. I'm going to be in chaos. I'm going to be whatever. And so doesn't mean that I'm not busy, but I always say that I'm good busy. I work hard, but I also have times when I'm not working hard. So there's times when I'm unplugged, I get away, I do those things. So I try to do my own work first so that I'm in a position where I can do good listening, I can do good problem solving, and I can be a good contributor. The second is I simply try to understand the role that I play. And so in my organization, I have other people that I'm honored to work with. And so I need to trust them, empower them, or not have them in those roles. When you and I work on projects together in SafeTech, or we work with clients, I try to understand what my role is, what my deliverables are, just get roles and responsibilities really clear, get what we're trying to accomplish together really clear. And so then I know how to contribute, and I don't waste time doing things that don't contribute or don't fulfill me in some way. And then just from a time standpoint, I just try to lead my day. And what is there one or two things that I just need to make sure that I get done today? And if some other crisis comes up, fine, but I just got those in my head. I knew today with our big work coming up with Alaska, I knew one of the things that I needed to work in today. I didn't need to schedule a spot for it. I just knew today I needed to go through my itinerary for Alaska and confirm with the folks that I'm going to be spending some time with. So as moments popped up, I grabbed those. And then lastly, in a real technical kind of way, I don't let my phone and email rule me. I mean, my email is still a little bit of a Pavlov's dog with me, but I just generally return phone calls in the afternoon so that I can use my morning to really plug away at a few things. And so those are the things that I do. But I also know that, you know, you have just as many things pulling you in just as many directions. And you also have a way of being intimately aware of a particular project and where it's at and its details, but yet can on the fly switch to something new or different. How do you manage that?
Well, let me recap because I think
Please.
that what you said was really good, and then I'll put my 2 cents in.
Great.
But you said first that you take good care of yourself, and I'm just so impressed that that was the first thing you mentioned. I know that vacations are sacred to you. I know that time off and time at your cabin is sacred, and I know that you prioritize that. And I just want to lift that out a little bit and say to our listeners that when you start by prioritizing self-care, you've already established a reward for yourself. Often we reward ourselves around time after we've accomplished a whole bunch of other stuff. But you first take care of yourself and understand who you are, what you need, how to charge your batteries, all of that. So I really like that.
And if I could just quickly comment, for too long in EMS, we've created this merit badge that says, if you're burned out, good, right? You're running ragged, you're working all of these shifts, you got 3 or 4 different jobs. That somehow was this huge badge of honor. And
Yeah.
I just want to suggest it's not. It is absolutely not. And if your organization or others ask that of you or require that of you, I would hope we could begin to change that, because we don't listen as well. We, you know, when all of these things that just cause us to be bad leaders when we're burned out. And Megan had pointed out for us on her behalf that one of our participants, Andy, has his hand up when there's a moment.
Well, and the second thing you mentioned was roles, that you're very clear about what your role is and its limitations and the need to use others. And and the third thing is that you really approach each day with not simply reacting to the day, but proactively asking yourself, what's the most important thing for me to do today? What are the things that I need to get done? And then I can fill in all of those emergencies. I can fill in all of those last minute things that come up around that, but I know what needs to be done and I make time and I prioritize that. I also heard that you said that you really make sure that the technology of today, the text, the email, the phone, doesn't wind up hijacking your day.
Right.
That you find some way to contain that. So I think those
Hopefully
are
it
really great.
enhances it. Yeah.
Yes, I think those are really great. Let's. Is there a question we need to answer?
There wasn't. It was just a technical error that raised the hand. So we're good. Thanks.
Good. Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that you know, you and I are very different, and all of us are different. And one of the things those who have been in our academy know is that we don't teach any specific kind of time management tools. All of you use different kinds of things like Google Calendar and Outlook, and some of you, like me, write things down on paper and have lists, and we all have different tools that we use, and we just want you to find what works really well for you in terms of that those sort of tools and technologies that work best for you, and those will be very different. There's no one great way. What works good for one of your colleagues may not work well for you. So we really want to say use those things. But what is most important to me, and I think is really missing in our own individual use of our 1440 minutes each day, is a lack of clarity about where we're going and what's most important. And all of us are going somewhere. Even as your job as an FTO or as a supervisor, a manager, director, or an executive, all of us are going somewhere, and yet we often don't have clarity about it. So what happens is we don't lead; we just get pushed along. The day just pushes us along. And so when I ask you what's the most important for you to get done today, a lot of people don't know because they don't have clarity about what's really important in their lives and what they really want more of and what's important. So it's vitally important to ask yourself some questions about what matters to me. Where am I going? How do I want to spend this day? So we often hear these things like, well, family is a top priority for me, or taking care of myself, or getting an education, all of those things. But what we see is there's an incongruence between actually the behaviors and actions. And so what I'm really interested first is some clarity about where I'm going. And the second thing that I think is really important is to take a little bit of time. So I don't know if you do this, but Aarron, when you get clear what it is that you need to lead in your day, if that just is percolating in the back of your mind or all the time, I know for me, if I just take a few minutes, either the night before or in the parts of the morning of the day, is just to important today. When I connect with where I'm going, what is most important today? And we find that scheduling the stuff that really matters is really important. And what we mean by that is finding a time of day and actually putting in and scheduling the stuff that's important to you. Now, maybe that's self-care, maybe that's meeting with somebody else, maybe that's something else, but scheduling the stuff that's really, really important. And here's the problem with schedules. Schedules don't work if you don't respect them. And what we have found really, really fascinating is that no one will respect the schedule any more than you do. So if you make a schedule but you allow it to be tromped on or stepped on by others, they will never respect it. They will never know. And because if you're not willing to say no, I just need this time. This is the time, and I'm going to do this during 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Taking that scheduling and making it sacred and sticking to it will not only send a powerful message to yourself, it'll send a powerful message to the people that you work with. So for I know working with you, Aarron, that there's certain times and certain days where you have blocked out things, and it's just they're sacred. You can't nothing. I mean, short of a real genuine family emergency, nothing can intrude on them.
Well, and again, knowing many of our listeners and where we really began this conversation are in the middle, they might say, well, it's people above me, right? They're the ones pushing these things down. And so I hear you saying, yeah, get really clear about what's important to yourself. And I have a little commute on the way in the morning. I have a little commute on the way home, and the radio is on, and the brain is working in the background, and it's really like, hey, there's these things, and they kind of percolate up to the surface. Similar at the way home is, what did I get accomplished today? But if someone else is kind of pushing these things down, then again, my encouragement is have that conversation that says, boy, John, in my role as one of your frontline supervisors, I want to really make sure that I'm hitting it out of the ballpark. Would you mind spending a little bit of time with me and just helping me really deeply understand what really matters here from your perspective? I know there's many responsibilities I've have, and I obviously will continue to do them. But as I get busy, if there's a day when I have to begin to pick and choose which ones I'm going to do and which ones I don't do, having a deeper, better understanding from you about what really matters will help me. And I'll also encourage you, listeners, that John's answers may also help you as well. So if John says, Aarron, all that matters is the UHU, that's it. I need you out there, just my words, just beating the mule. Make sure those crews don't stay on scene too long. They turn on the hospitals as quick as possible. They're back in service. That's what I need. But, gosh, boss, I was reading these things about engagement and this. Nope. Beat the mule. Oh, and you simply know, is this where I want to work? And I'm not saying that it's not. I'm simply saying, and I'm over exaggerating in using this, but if it is, we really need you, Aarron, to be in crisis and to manage the crisis. Now you know what really matters. You know how to prioritize the day. We feel that won't be long-term sustainable when it comes to your workforce. When it comes to finding and keeping more of the right people. You might be able to find some people, but they're likely not going to be the right people and turnover and such. So again, we always encourage the use of the language of I feel, I believe, my opinion is. If I go into John and say, boss, this just won't work. You keep pushing more and more stuff down on me. You keep preaching this engagement, which I don't really think you really believe in, because I back him into a corner. And I shouldn't be surprised when he comes out kicking, because I backed him into a corner. I might just, hey, when you have a few moments, there's a moment of calm in his day, there's a moment of calm in my day. I might ask those questions about what really matters so I can get clearer before I go in and say, I have too many things on my plate, take some off. Now I have the story that says, you shared with me these things are important, and so occasionally these fall off. How do you feel about that? Oh yeah, that sounds fine. Get to them when you can.
Yeah, what a wonderful way to have a conversation about time. As I think leadership teams need to be talking about it. They need to be talking about what you want to aim for is a perception that you have a little bit of excess time in your schedule and that your plates are right sized and not too full. Yeah. And there needs to be a conversation around that. Well, in closing, I just have a couple of things, Aarron, that I want to share, and that's that hopefully as people listen to us and work with us, know that what we're aiming for is people to have really meaningful and joyful lives around work. We think that the best organizations, the most successful, the most competitive organizations will be those where the employees and people within it have a sense of accomplishment and joy and fulfillment. The Positive Psychology Center for Positive Psychology at the University of Pennsylvania says that well-being is characterized by 5 important things. One of those is positive emotion. The second one is really an engagement in life, a real enthusiasm and engagement of life, good relationships, a sense of meaning. And the last thing they say is really important to a sense of well-being is accomplishment. And what I wanted to say is that it's so important for you to end each working day with a sense of what you have accomplished. It's always easy to feel really torn apart by what didn't get done, what wasn't completed, what didn't get crossed off the list. But we'd like you to turn that around and consider ending your work day by a recounting of what you did accomplish. And it's a reframing that says, likely you got a lot of things done. And as you feel more accomplished, the connection to this is that you will feel more energy and enthusiasm for what you're going to do the next day. As opposed to when you look at the end of the day and what you haven't got accomplished is what stands out. It's kind of like when you teach the class and get the reviews, you get 20 positive reviews and 1 negative review. You spend all your time in the negative stuff. That just is deflating. And you need energy to go on. And then the last thing I just want to say is that there's a wonderful little book written by a hospice nurse from Australia named Bronnie Ware. And the title of the book is The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And after 20 some years of working in hospice and taking notes on what people regretted when they died, just 5 things, but the top one for men, the top regret of dying men was I wished I hadn't worked so much. And we often fill our lives with a tremendous amount of work and don't have much balance. And I've come to believe at this stage of my life that my work is actually better and I actually accomplish more when I limit and put a frame around work. We just meet so many people in the emergency services world who are overwhelmed by the work. It just fills every nook and cranny of their lives, and I just worry, Aarron, that some of those people will get to that hospice bed and look back and say, "Gosh, I wished I hadn't worked so much." Yeah. So that's I think, if you can grab the choices, and that's what we wanted to kind of end with, was just how that you have so many choices around this.
Yeah, and I would just add, if I might, we made some great suggestions for the people in the middle. Have that conversation about finding out what is important to the bosses above you. My ask of the bosses is provide some hospitality to the conversation.
Yes.
So when that first supervisor comes to you and says, and maybe not with the right words and the right tack and the right moment and et cetera, and asks to have a conversation about what really matters, how could we welcome it? Could we maybe even encourage it? Hey, gosh, I've been really thinking about your guys' workload and such. I'd like to chat with each of you. Imagine that invitation. And lastly, to just mirror something John just said, from at least has been contributed to Ben Franklin. Keep doing what you've always been doing, and you'll keep getting what you've always been getting. So unless you're willing to make some kind of change, to break the mold, to turn into the skid, we're not going to get out of this. And you can all do it. I know you can. 10%, just one little bite. Don't have to change the world in a day, but one little bite.
Well, thank you. You've been an inspiration to me, Aarron, around time, and I really appreciate being able to have this conversation. And I hope our listeners did. We want to encourage them to reach out to us. The recording of this and all of our Leadership Alive sessions will be on our website, safetechsolutions.us. So look forward to the next time we're able to be together.
Yeah, and a quick shameless plug. We're excited that we're back to in-person leadership academies, and we have one set up for the fall of 2021. So love to see your organizations and your leaders continue to participate in the course.
Great.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Aarron. See you, everybody.